everyone, and welcome to today's OneNote Best Practice live event. My name is Megan Towns. I work for Microsoft as a learning delivery specialist, and what that means is I have the very fun job of teaching teachers how to use our technologies and integrate it into their classrooms, whether they be remote or face-to-face, or a little bit of a combination of both. So today here to share with you some best practice around the use of OneNote in the current climate. So I have been using Microsoft OneNote since I was a wee lass. So much so, I loved it so much when I was teaching. I ended up becoming a Microsoft expert educator, and this is the original OneNote cape that I received as a Microsoft expert educator. And I love it so much to this day. I insist on wearing it when I'm running professional learning sessions face-to-face or online. So now I am set to deliver this fabulous workshop. So like I said, I've used it for many years. I started using OneNote back in the DER days when I was a teacher, teaching without the cloud, without excellent internet. And over the years worked at a couple of different schools that used OneNote in different ways. Before Microsoft 365 came along, and we now have, you know, a house to house all of our OneNote notebooks, and people are using OneNote from within the Office 365 environment in their own OneDrives, as well as in Microsoft SharePoint and potentially even Microsoft Teams. And so, yeah, here to share with you some best practice of using OneNote in today's climate with all the fabulous tools that you have available to you. We've seen an extensive growth in the use of OneNote, particularly with inside the Teams environment in education. And so here to share some best practice with you so you can make the most of that experience. We've recently released a support guide for teachers, and the link there is on the screen, and I will have it on every slide throughout this presentation. I will be jumping into live demos and not boring you by PowerPoint. And so that aka.ms/OneNote April 2020 link is a great resource for you to reflect back on after today's session, but also one that you could share with your IT staff if you're in an independent school particularly, where they can use the IT advice to make sure your OneNote environment is at the optimum as well. So let's jump in and have a bit of a chat. Someone did report echo. I've run quite a few live events today, and someone found when they turned down their microphone or turned up that the echo disappeared. Or headphones, sorry. All right, so 4 things I want to sort of cover today, and 4 things you should be considering when adopting the use of OneNote, you know, either across your school, because you might be, you know, making it happen at a large scale, or perhaps just independently, you know, as a lone ranger teacher using OneNote within your school. And regardless of whether you're that lone ranger or, you know, a whole school adopting OneNote, I think this rule of 4 can be is really important. And so I'm going to focus on these 4 different areas today, but also share a PDF link at the very end that you can download and, you know, share with your colleagues and with your networks as well. So, which includes, you know, advice for these 4 different areas, but it's very much what I'm focusing on as part of today's webinar. So we'll be looking at how you can create initial content for OneNote so that it uploads faster. I think there's been some bad practice that has arisen over the years, which I'm very much guilty of myself in regards to inserting files into OneNote. So we'll look at better ways of doing, you know, creating content from scratch. We'll also be looking at the way you know, you can continue to add content to your existing notebooks, so or replace potentially as well, so that it syncs more efficiently. Also be looking at how, you know, once you've got your content inside your OneNote environment, how can you share that for best performance to your students? And then also, and potentially even with your colleagues as well. And then finally, depending on the platform you're using with OneNote, you know, OneNote desktop, or sorry, OneNote software or OneNote applications are available in every platform. You can use OneNote online through any browser. You can use OneNote software on a Mac. You've got two types of OneNote software on a PC, which we'll be addressing. And you've also got the OneNote mobile applications as well. So we're talking about optimizing your experience on some of those devices. So I'm actually just going to turn my video off. My bandwidth today has not been fantastic, so turning off my video should help. And now you know what I look like. We can easily turn off that video. So that's my rule of 4. Definitely keep those in mind as we go through this session today. So that first rule around creating your OneNote content, and I've basically got a slide for each rule, and I'm going to switch between that slide, which is pretty much a guide for me, and showcasing some ideas and strategies for making sure you can follow that rule efficiently. So when it comes to creating your content, like I said, I've been using OneNote since 2007 and spent a large amount of the last 10, 13 years, 10, 13, interesting difference, also helping teachers to use OneNote. So both the last 2 schools I worked in for about 8 or 9 years, I was there using OneNote myself and sharing my, I guess, knowledge with other teachers. And what I saw happen over time was, and I was guilty of it myself, we were inserting files all the time directly into OneNote rather than creating and originating the content directly onto the OneNote page. And, after a couple of years of using OneNote, I like to talk about OneNote as a marathon, not a sprint. And so the way that you create your content will change over time. And hopefully the advice you get in your webinar, in this webinar today, will see you change some of your practices. And one of those should definitely be to create content directly on the page rather than insert your existing content. I think sometimes that ends up meaning when you are inserting files, you end up double handling. So if you spend some time initially creating content directly onto the page, you can save time in the future once you reuse those pages. Tables are a really great way of organizing your content. I get a lot of feedback around the fact that tables don't merge inside of OneNote, and that can be frustrating. However, a lot of people find when they use the accessibility checker in Word and look at the merge cells that they have in Word, they discover that their document is actually not accessible to all users. And so it's really important that, even though you might love merging cells, you need to be really mindful of the people that might be looking at your document, and it will no longer be accessible if you've merged like crazy in tables. So keeping your tables simple is great and easy to do in OneNote, and I'll show you some tips and tricks with that. Another one, which I may or may not show, because it just depends on your device how you do it, but we have shared some advice in the PDF, is that you can, if you're inserting pictures into OneNote, which is a great thing to do, if they're high resolution pictures, that's going to take a lot longer to sync. Now, there might be, known sync errors that happen from time to time, but one of the things, I guess, with inserting large files in is even when you have a perfect sync experience and your internet's going really, really well, one of the challenges is when your students sync the notebook you might have created down to their computer, it's using a lot of data. And so we need to be very mindful, again, around inclusivity, that if our students are using mobile devices, we don't want them to, open in app and suddenly have their data smashed as well because you've inserted, supersonic high resolution photos or 135-page Word documents. So not only should you reduce your images to improve the sync process, but also just to be mindful of data download as well. And then for those of you who might be using audio and video recordings inside of OneNote, keeping them concise. And when you're setting tasks for students, ensuring that there is a time requirement of, perhaps no longer than 2 minutes for a radio interview recording or something like that, and keeping it short and sweet, because again, that can increase the size capacity. Someone asked a question around the different file formats. So obviously there are some file formats that take up more space, and so file formats like .svgs do take up less space, and they will insert, I think, from memory into OneNote. So that's something to be mindful of. All right, so let's jump in and have a look at the way you can create that content directly onto your page. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, talk in the context of our class notebook experience. Right now, class notebook for me, if your school has Microsoft Teams turned on, then Microsoft Teams should be where you are creating your class notebook. So I actually ran a session with maths teachers about an hour ago. And we were looking at some Microsoft Teams stuff, and I just quickly went in just a minute ago and set up that class notebook, which I forgot to set up during the session for anyone that was in that one. So I've set up my class notebook, and if I expand this out, I can see I've got a welcome tab, I've got a space for collaboration, a space for my content that students can view but not edit. I've also gone into my my Manage Notebook tool, which is underneath this Class Notebook tab here, selected Manage Notebooks, and I've enabled the Teacher Only section group. I love enabling the Teacher Only section group so that I've got a space to prepare my student work, create that content directly onto the page, and then I'm able to distribute that accordingly into the relevant space. So once I turn that on, it just appears underneath the content library. And then all the students that I've added into the class are automatically added into the notebook. And when I went through the wizard setup process in Class Notebook, I gave them all these 3 specific sections, which I can add on to later. All right, so that's the bones of my notebook, ready to go, ready to create content, ready to distribute content. Now, if you prefer, and I definitely do, for the notebooks that you know you'll be using regularly, I drop down Open in Browser and I open in the app, especially to prepare all my content and create that awesome stuff. So someone says they can't see my screen. If Claire or Clara or Daniel, who are helping in the background, can let me know my screen is cool, right? So I will just say open in app right now, and that's going to open in my OneNote desktop application. So super quick, opened up straight away, and I can see that that maths notebook there is ready to go in the OneNote Windows 10 application. So someone asked about that teacher space. I'm limited on time today, but I will quickly just show that. So it's in the Class Notebook tab just here, whether you're using standalone Class Notebook, thank you, anonymous person, or Class Notebook within Teams. Under the Class Notebook tab within OneNote, along this line here, you'll see that black Manage Notebooks page, icon, and that's where you can turn on the Teacher Only section. It's a really great space to prepare your work. If you have a co-owner in your class notebook or in your team, you can do that preparation together, which is really good. Christina asks an important question about how you can bring your existing notebooks into Teams. I will be addressing that very soon as well. So great question. Keep them coming, people. All right, so I've opened up in OneNote for Windows 10. It is the best version of OneNote on your PC. I'll talk about that a little bit later and talk about how you can set the default opener of notebooks to be Windows 10 instead of OneNote 2016. So I can now expand all of these open. I don't have to keep running back to Teams. Every time I want to update this notebook, I just open up the software. All right. And so whether your students open in OneNote as well is completely up to you. Someone actually asks a question in the Q&A around, that assumption of students opening in OneNote. And I think it depends on your students. As a teacher who's setting up my notebooks, I would be opening in OneNote app all the time to prepare that work. If my students were not in a BYOD environment and they were on mobile devices and random computers and computer lab computers, I would probably be encouraging them to just use Class Notebook within Teams itself. If they are using a mobile phone or an iPad regularly that they own, then I would also encourage that they download and install the OneNote app, and they can open their notebooks on their device directly onto their mobile devices. So it's an important question, and the answer does depend on the context. And so if your device access is limited for your students, just encourage them to use Class Notebook within Teams and on their mobile, they're on their own mobile devices, and that works really nicely. If you are lucky enough to work in a one-to-one environment, then yes, ask your students to open up the software in the app, just like you would. All right, so let's look at creating content directly onto the page. All right, so over here in my little teacher only section, I've set up some activities. All right, so just wanted to talk about creating that content directly onto page. And for most of these, I actually went through a bit of a timeline in my OneDrive last night and accessed some of my old notebooks from when I was teaching English. So a lot of the content that I created came from existing documents, usually on Word or a PowerPoint slide, or I was grabbing content from the internet and building it directly onto the page. And so this is just a task that I set with the usual sort of criteria. And I use that table concept to divide my text up. So it's a single cell table. Okay, so I would insert the table, but I would just do one column and then just create a whole heap of cells. And so that can be a nice way to present content directly onto the page. And so I put some checklists in there for the checklist experience. Another thing that teachers love, and particularly teachers that have used OneNote for ages, is that if you are using the bullet points or numbering, what happens is that it actually pushes those numbers or bullet points to the left. And if you select all of the points and then just click your tab key, that will actually indent it and bring everything above it back to the left. And so I get rounds of applause sometimes when I run workshops, and teachers who've used OneNote for years are like, that's amazing. So just making your content directly on the page look better is going to help you, okay? And also when you're then distributing a page that is purely just text, it's going to sync a lot faster and work a lot better for you. So let's have another look, have a look at some other direct onto page content creation. So for this one, if I just zoom in a little bit, so if I scroll down, again, just some descriptions. I love using the styles in OneNote. I think that also provides inclusive access to the content for students who might be dyslexic. Those really loopy fonts can be really frustrating for them, and they might not have the font installed on their own device, so it appears a bit oddly for them. So using styles, it will look exactly the same for them, no matter what platform they're using. And so if you scroll down a little bit, one of the other big challenges when you're putting content directly onto the page is, on your Word document, you might have some questions and you've written a line or something like that. And when you print it out, students write directly onto the line. When you paste questions into OneNote, it's not always obvious to a student where you would like them to write the answer. So one of my other favorite strategies is to use a good old 1-by-1 cell. And when you insert a table that's 1-by-1 cell, all right, so let me just actually delete this one. All right, so when I do insert table 1-by-1, doesn't look too big. So I can just expand that over a little bit by hovering over it. And then it's obvious to the students that they can type in there. And then as they type, I usually do unbold that. All right, the great thing is that as they type, that's actually going to expand while they type. And so you don't have to worry about things being all over the top of one another. So 1-by-1 cells, great for your Q&A type stuff on those pages as you create content. So again, that one's fairly simple. Another one with tables, I know I'm harping on about tables, but I really do think they're a great way to make your content on the page directly look good when you know the tips and tricks. And that's what we're here for. So this one again is just a single column table. So insert table and that single column. And what I've done to differentiate from one section to another is actually just shade each of those areas. So if I wanted to shade that cell, for example, I can just click the arrow there, or I can do Control-A twice to select the whole cell. Elisa informs me that 1-by-self is brilliant. Honestly, it's my favorite OneNote trick. I kid you not. So under the table tab that pops up, when I have my cursor or my selection happening inside of that particular cell, or I can do it across a number as well. You probably can't see it from your end, but if I'm actually selecting 2 different rows now by selecting that content. And so I can use the pop-up that appears in Windows 10 to change the shading, and you get all so many different colors to shade with. Or I can do it up the top here as well and select shading. And so another thing that absolutely blew someone's mind recently when I was running a OneNote workshop was this more colors. And if I select more colors, I get the whole gamut of colors across the rainbow, and I can make that even a slightly different shade of blue if you really want to break down the color. So again, using your tables and using shading to break up your content is a great idea. Okie dokie, so this one, a little bit different. This one again is a student activity, and I've changed up the way I've used different cells or different tables. So for this one, the students are, doing some film term stuff before they actually start watching a film. So just ask the question, they have to choose the words from the box to label each image. So again, I just did a 1 by 1, to be able to say to students, they're the words I want you to use. And then down here, I did, what did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4. I must have done 2 by 2. I inserted a picture into the top 2 cells. And then at the bottom, I just put that wording in. And I've actually included where the students, actually, this is already a completed task. I must have grabbed it from a student notebook that had work in it already. Oh, yes, I did. Look at that. So further down this one, we can see that I've actually got 2 lots of tables side by side here, which can be a little bit problematic sometimes, but it worked quite well here. The student was obviously using, either their pen, digital pen, or their mouse to do those lines from word to match up. And then if we move down again, it's just that single cell, and they've completed that particular activity. So yeah, breaking it all up. I think for this one, I actually had done the actual underlines like that for that closed passage experience. And I just taught students to double click the line and then write the word in. Oh, that's not the correct point of view, I think it is. Special effect, tracking. Go tracking directly onto it, and when they double click that line, I've actually got it underlined and bolded, the word, the underline, so that when they double click it and write it, the word appears automatically bolded and underlined. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Radio. So let's jump into a few other ones. Oh, so this is a nice one for showing the people that really miss merging cells in OneNote. So this is, what is this? Oh, I know, this is just some content that I share as part of the teacher diary that Pip Cleaves releases every year. I always help her out and create the Microsofty stuff for it. And so this just breaks up some of the professional learning sessions that teachers can access and get some resources on. And you'll notice that it looks like I've got a merged heading cell for Unlock 365 in the classroom. I'll just make that really big so it hopefully comes out a bit better from the other end. And then underneath that, I actually have a second table. It's not part of the first table. So that's one table just there, a 1 by 1 cell. And then these 6 cells are a separate table. So let me show you how I would do that. All right, I'll scroll down. You can see it all looks very pretty and organized directly onto the page. So let's insert a table that's 1 by 1 cell wide. All right, and I'll just quickly write this is a heading. And then instead of hitting tab, where I might get an extra cell, what you can do is actually use your down arrow on your keyboard. All right, and then that's when I now create my second table. So I now come in and go table. I'll do 3 by 2 here. And then, you do get that standard size and you do have to manipulate it a little bit. You can't, auto, what are they called? Like when you auto spread out the table. I don't even know what the correct terminology is. But you can just manually do that by clicking across the lines. So now I can create my heading, bold that up, you know, here's my subheading. You know, it might be a link as well. And be ready to go. Now, usually if I'm going to create something like what I've got above, I'll keep that as like a template and I'll just copy that. And every time I need to reuse it, I'll jump in and actually make the change. So I could look at, I don't know, Office 365 in the classroom and start making the rest of the table. So checkout table, cells, it's probably what I hear back from teachers most around how frustrating it is, but I actually really like using tables in OneNote. I think they're easy to use, and when you know those little tricks like one by one and using the down arrow to create another table underneath it, that can really help you with creating content directly onto the page. All right, so yeah, that's my advice. That's another lovely one where it's just a what's that one called? A 2x1 table. So picture on the left and content on the right. Oh, someone asked about mathematical symbols. So you can both draw maths and you can do no, there's no like equation editor yet, I don't think, but stay tuned. So yeah, just some other examples of those table cells. So last little one I wanted to talk about for that creating OneNote content directly is that a lot of the times, a lot of teachers will use audio, particularly with younger years students or students with learning difficulties. And so they'll record their voice as part of the instructions as well as do the writing. So I just might write, you know, week 2 tasks. All right, again, I'll zoom in so you can see it a bit better. I love a good 2x1. 2x1. It's very Lego terminology. Can I get a 2x1 and a 4x4? Flats, not blocks. Sorry, I'm obsessed with Lego. Week 2 tasks. So I might just leave that one blank. And over here, I'll write, please read the tasks below, answer any questions, and submit via Teams when you have finished. All right. And then I'll insert a video file, an audio file to help my students as well. Language teachers love using insert audio as well, but just in regards to creating that content, you need to be mindful, like I said, of keeping it short and concise. So when I click audio, please read the tasks below, answer any questions, and then submit via Teams when you have finished. Looking forward to your responses. Right, so I'll click stop. I usually tidy this up a little bit. Fun fact, you can even rename. My understanding is you used to be able to rename, or maybe just double click on there. No. Oh, hello. Let's click pause there. Maybe you can't rename it anymore. Anyway, moving on. So again, we just use that. I use that 2x1 to keep the audio and the written text together. And sometimes even if I'm asking students to do a particular response, same thing, a 2x1 comes in really handy. I've done a couple of webinars today where I've talked about, you know, using creating a radio interview. Okay, so write your radio. Actually, let's do it above. Right. Okay, so draft your radio advertisement in the box below. When you are ready, record the advertisement in the shaded box. All right, so let's delete that one. Let's give them that 1x1 to do their draft. All right, and then I'll usually just do enter, do another good old 2x1. All right, so put your, and I give some instructions if my kids haven't really used OneNote a lot before, in the box to the right, then select insert and audio, and that works across all platforms as well, which is really cool. OneNote Online, the whole lot. And record your interview. Advertisement. All right, I'll just move that over. And then I make this one nice and shady. So that's where, that's where kids know to do the recording and they can do their draft up here. All right, So that, my friends, is a quick overview of creating your content directly onto the page. What you can then do with that is completely up to you. Okay, so I'll come to that and sharing in a moment. And there's been a few questions about, when do you put stuff where and all that sort of thing. When I get to the sharing OneNote content, I'll talk about that. So a little bit more about putting actual stuff into your OneNote pages. And this is where I am probably going to say it 14 times. Inserting large files into OneNote is bad practice. Unfortunately, I know that people have struggled in the past with having, sorry, I just need to check something. I know people have struggled in the past because OneNote has actually been the only platform available to them to allow them to sequence learning. Teachers love the sections and the pages, and they've been using that to sequence learning because they didn't have any other platform available to them. Maybe their school didn't have a learning management system, or they haven't had Teams turned on for them before. And the only way they could really, create these beautiful sequences of learning was with OneNote. And so, for years it's been happening. Teachers were inserting files, but now you can actually put your files into other places and make them available really easily inside of your OneNote pages without taking up space. So let me show you how you do that. And the good news is these first two rules, if you're following those two rules, when it comes to sharing the content, you shouldn't have any issue. So that's the good news about this whole experience. All right. So let me just open that one up. Alrighty. All right, so the things we can do, we can link or embed files directly from either OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint if you're using SharePoint. And so, if you're using Class Notebook within Microsoft Teams and you're linking to the files that are inside of that team, you don't have to worry about permissions because everything already exists within the same permissions experience. If you're going to link to files that live in your OneDrive or SharePoint, you need to make sure the permissions match up. So, whoever is in your class notebook needs to have either read-only or edit permission on the file that lives in OneDrive or SharePoint. So it is a little bit of double handling when you're linking or embedding files from OneDrive or SharePoint. So best practice is to keep everything in Teams if you have access to Teams. And then if you're using the content library, again, I was probably guilty of this. I would put all my content into the content library. And even if it was very contenty and not a student activity, it was just a lot of text about, a film or a novel or whatever it might be. I might have linked to a few videos, but it was literally content for students to consume. There is no need to distribute that to the students. Right? It's content. You can teach them, or they can learn to use the content area to read their content. But again, the class materials section in Teams can be really handy for that, to keep the content. All right. So a couple of people reporting some, blur and all that sort of stuff at their end. Just letting you know, I did a speed test and I've got 108 megabytes per second at the moment. So everything's going out okay. Might not just be being received very well at your end. So yeah, don't worry, this is being recorded, and the link you clicked on to join is the link you can use to watch later as well. So yeah, you'll be able to engage with this content later. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about was embedding your video content. Video content is difficult at the best of times, but there's a lot of places where you can store video content that is streamed now. So Microsoft Stream within your 365 environment, obviously YouTube and Vimeo, for example. ClickView will now also embed, and has embedded for quite some time, in fact, into OneNote, as do things like TEDx video. So you can check out all the things that do embed into OneNote, and it's literally as easy as normally just copying the link and pasting it, or you can also click the share button from ClickView, for example, and share that link directly into OneNote. So I'll showcase some of those. Woo, running out of time. Another option, which was actually shared by one of my colleagues, Stephen, today, is embedding Sway. So if you do use Sway, you can easily, bring a lot of content into Sway, and you can embed the Sway link inside of your team as well. So there's all these fabulous options for bringing multimedia content into your Sway, into your OneNote pages without it taking up excess space. Because when you embed or link to, it's taking up very, very little space on your OneNote pages. So let's have a look-see at how that appears. So I'm actually going to talk first about the embedded files. So, and again, this bit of a, I don't know if it's a secret, but it's definitely not one that's commonly known. Now, if you're a fan of YouTube videos, I suggest you follow Sam McNeil. He's one of my New Zealand colleagues. He has a great YouTube channel. So does Mike Tholfsen from our US team on little hints and tips. And I actually found a tip from Sam yesterday, I think it was, on all the things I'm about to do. So I'm going to show you how you can link to and embed files from both your OneDrive, from your SharePoint experience, if you're using SharePoint, and also from your teams. So I'll start with the best one first. If I've got some files saved in my Microsoft team, right, I literally set this one up for my workshop just before, and I realize I don't have any files in it. So that's always good. So let me just quickly open this one up. Even though it's a maths team, let's drag a stage 5 geography activity in. So that's just uploading my Word document. So that's all uploaded, happy days. What I now do is, you've got to make, the trick is, right, if you want to embed your file, is to make sure you open it in the browser, in Word Online or PowerPoint Online or Office or Excel Online, okay? So here's the fabulous document. One of the great activities available from the Department of Education's Learning from Home site. So I just wait for it to all load up, wait for my ribbon to be ready and everything like that, because the URL does change just a little bit while it's loading. So I grab that URL, I copy it, and are you ready? Are you ready, people, for the magic of embedding files into OneNote? All I need to do is hit Control-V, and it pastes it in and it embeds it, and it's taking up very little space, and it's a live document, and you can scroll through that document. If it happens to be collaborative, you can click on the title or the little button in the bottom right hand corner to go full screen, and you and your colleagues or students, if it is in a collaborative space, can be collaborating on that live. It's amazing. I love embedding files, and that's taking up so little data, so much less than actually inserting the files themselves. So let's have a look at how that looks in SharePoint. And funnily enough, it's so very similar. So I'll quickly just jump into a SharePoint site here. Actually, I jumped into one where I don't have the navigation menu up. All right, so I will dive into my documents here. And then same thing, quite frankly, all I need to do is navigate to where I know I have a file. All right, for this one, I've actually set the whole folder as read only. And yep, flip gridding beds as well for that person asking the question. So from SharePoint, when I click on a file, it automatically opens in Office Online. So this time it's a PowerPoint document. So you can probably just see that URL changed. And then we click on that link once we're all loaded up. And then right click, copy. Oops, that's Teams. Let's go into OneNote instead. And again, paste the link in. And alakazam, we have an embedded PowerPoint document. Sarah said you don't need to open the browser. You can copy the link and select the SharePoint link and it pastes. I tried that yesterday. It didn't work, but maybe I was not doing it properly because I thought that was the case too. I just find that if I grab that URL at the top, it's always right. So now let's look at OneDrive. Now you do need to be very conscious of both your OneDrive and SharePoint files. Like I said, you need to make sure that you know, if you're sharing it into a class notebook that's got your 25 students and another co-teacher in it, if you're going to share a document, you need to make sure they have permission to view it from your OneDrive, and you grant them the permission accordingly. So I could jump in here, make sure I've set the permissions for everyone in my class to see it, or maybe I just go, you know what, I'm happy if everyone in the Department of Education sees that. I don't need them to edit. I'll click on apply, and I'll just copy that link. Let's see if this one works. Let's test Sarah's, what's the name? So happy if it works. No, I didn't think it did. So yeah, I do find it's just easier if you now open the document into your Office Online environment. There's like people in shouty capitals in the Q&A saying, this is what I needed. I love it. I love the feedback, people. Keep it coming. So we copy that link. We jump back down, and funnily enough, alakazam, we've got another embedded document. And so that hyperlink works, and as does going full screen. So yeah, whether it lives in OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint, you can embed those. Now, you might not want to embed it. You actually might just want to link to it. All right, so let's just zoomy. So one of my favorite, and then I'll actually talk about linking to OneNote pages as well. So you might provide instructions to students or even teachers if you're using Staff Notebook. So if I say click here to open the document, all right, I can just hyperlink click here, right click, and my OneDrive document I still have copied. I can select link and paste the link in. So now it's not embedded because I chose not to have it embedded in this file, but when the student clicks on click here, it's going to open up in their browser. So I can see that flashing down the bottom now, and there's my fabulous George Harrison document. Now, another really good one to know about is the link to Microsoft Teams viewing of your file. So 8,000 windows here at the moment. So if I wanted students to go to a read-only file that lives in my Teams class materials, but I didn't want them to end up opening it in Office Online, I didn't want an extra tab to open. All right, let me just quickly upload another file. Let's not upload that one. Let's just go, good old document one. How many document ones have you got saved in your files in your life? I think I've got about 800. All right, so we're uploading that document. The permissions in class materials are set to read only for my students. So even though it's a Word document, they can't edit it. But this time, when I click my 3 dots or the ellipsis next to that file, I can copy link. And I get 2 options. Do I want the person who clicks on that to open it in Teams, or do I want them to open it in SharePoint? And so I'll actually grab the link to Microsoft Teams. All right, now when I choose this, click here to open document. All right, and hyperlink it in. Control K is my favorite keyboard shortcut to create hyperlinks. That's going to be a little bit different for the individual user. All right, so what I'll do is I'll just quickly, 2020 Mat 2, right click on the name, click sync, and sync this notebook. All right, and jump back over into Teams, select the class notebook so I can show you what that student experience would be. I think one of the good benefits of Teams and OneNote together is you keep all the students in the one place. So if I just expand that out, where was it making it? Teacher only. In my little teacher only section, if I now go down to week 1, all right. And, oh, wrong one. Come on, where's the rest of my tasks? Ooh, I just made a liar of myself. We'll wait for that to sync over. But yeah, the idea is that you can click here to open document, and when it's within the OneNote within Teams, the student then stays in Teams and they don't have to go through this process that I'm showing now, where that it goes to the browser and then forces them to open in normal Microsoft Teams. Oh, and I just realized I'm using my, oh, thank goodness. my Microsoft environment for this live event, and that could have caused some issues. So anywho, sorry about that one. But yeah, sharing the Teams file link can be really handy as well. All right. So what I want to show now is that embedding of web content, right? So I'll actually stick with this week 1 file from within Class Notebook in Teams. I've already shown a couple of things here. I'll actually bring them up, oops, again. So let me just jump down here and delete all these. Okay, so the other content you can embed is pretty epic. So let me just move from forms. Okay, so here's a Microsoft form I want to embed. I can click share from forms, click on copy, jump back into OneNote. In this case, it's the OneNote inside of OneNote Online inside my team. There's my quiz all embedded. Happy days. Let's move down further. You can actually tap on each box as well and make it a little bit bigger if you want to, completely up to you. So let's see what else embeds inside our Teams environment. So moving further along, let me close these. Here's a sway I made earlier today for some fabulous maths teachers I was working with. I can copy that link and jump back into OneNote Online or OneNote Desktop, wherever it might be. Whoops, if you're using OneNote Online, make sure you use your keyboard shortcuts. And we scroll down and there's the sway that's been inserted. So if I do have a lot of content in there, you know, I've got lots of videos embedded, lots of hyperlinks. Again, that's not taking up space on my OneNote page. And so we'll keep moving down. Yes, it does. So if you're using OneNote 2016, you will have problems if your version of OneNote 2016 is old. And I actually need to hurry up so I can talk about the older version of OneNote 2016 and how you can sort yourself out. So there's my GeoGebra link that will embed. I was playing around with Desmos as well. Actually, I wasn't. I grabbed that from another teacher. So you can embed all this content. It's so easy to embed content into your OneNote pages so that you've got some fabulous interactive activities, but they're not taking up the data space on each of your pages. So that's quite a few. You can also embed YouTube. I included a link earlier, aka.ms/OneNote embed. Let me just quickly pop that in as an announcement. And there are so many things you can see in this list that will embed into OneNote, including Clip View, like I said. So check it out. It's pretty cool and a great way to keep your notebooks nice and clean and free of any crazy data issues. All right. Link to the content library. That was the last thing I needed to show. So the other thing that you can do is when you're, creating an activity, let me just create a brand new page here. I'm going to jump in and link to OneNote sections or pages, quite frankly. All right, and again, it's about instructions. Please visit the page in the content library to read more. All right, and I can right click, and in my content library where you might have put a whole heap of stuff, right, I'm going to click to the standard page. I can right click and copy link to this page, or I can right click and copy link to section, which is what I'll do now, but you can do page or section. And then back over here in a OneNote, oh look, there's my syncing, happy days. Back over here in OneNote, I can say content library, and I can actually hyperlink of the page, oops. So there's content library. If I right click and hyperlink and pop the link in, that's going to, when the student clicks on it, they're literally going to go straight to the content library, right? And if I actually just do Control V with that link clicked, I actually get the name of the section and the web view link as well. So where, necessary, link to your sections and pages. Remember to right click to copy link to section or page. All right, on to rule 3, my friends. We're going to push through these. I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to give myself 5 minutes for each one. So sharing OneNote content. That's not the right page. Oh, you know what? I didn't update it. I need to fix that. So what I'm going to say here is when you're sharing your OneNote content, most people are doing that via distributing their content, and how you share best is actually in the PDF document I'm going to share. So don't stress about that page not being right. So distributing content from Class Notebook, you can do it from within the Class Notebook experience if you choose to, whether it's standalone OneNote or OneNote inside of Teams. And so you can click this little tab and you can click on distribute page, click distribute page, and that page, depending on what you select, will go out to all of your student sections. And a lot of people have been reporting that that can be taking up quite a lot of time. Often it's because their pages are so big. And it's now been limited to only 50 megabytes per page that you can distribute. So if your page is 65 megabytes, you'll get an error message to say, sorry, you can't distribute that. And so that can be problematic. However, I personally love to distribute from assignments instead. It makes it so much easier to provide feedback to my students. So let me show you how easy it is in less than 4 minutes. I'll create an assignment. All right, so I might write week 2 tasks. And I might put in some instructions, click the page below to view the tasks and complete them throughout the week. When you're ready for me to mark, please click hand in. All right, so I can add a resource. This is awesome. This makes me miss teaching because I wish I had this tool when I was using Class Notebook in the classroom. So I can go into wherever I've prepared that content across collaboration, teacher, wherever. In this case, I'll choose teacher. There's my activities. I'm going to choose week 2 tasks. And I'll click on attach. Now I want that to go to my students' classwork section. You might have different names for your sections and that's fine. And I'll click done. So each student's going to get a copy of the page. You can assign points and use the Teams rubric if you want to. You can assign it to, oh no, I wouldn't do that with Class Notebook. You can break it down so it's distributed only to certain students and you can set a due date. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to do any of that. So now I've assigned the work. So in the back end, assignments and Teams and OneNote are busy distributing that page to each one of my students. And so in the Class Notebook, if I want to navigate, let's expand this one out now. And I can see that in Andrew's section, right, when I expand that open, let's open up all the student sections. I gotta remember where I sent it. My classwork. All right. So there's my classwork. Ooh, still distributing. I can see that I've distributed my week 1 stuff just before this session started. I did a test. But yeah, let's talk about the week 1 stuff instead. But that was distributed. Oh, there's week 2. I just had to be patient, which I never am. There's my week 2 tasks as they start to come in. I can see all of that. Now, navigating through all of my students is really painful, right? And even students navigating around their notebook, they can find frustrating. However, if I click on assignments as a teacher now, I can click on week 2 tasks. I can click on Oscar and I can see straight away Oscar's week 2 tasks page. Now let's jump over and pretend to be Oscar temporarily. Where is Oscar? There he is. Let me just drag my Oscar window down onto my computer. All right, so here's Oscar's version of Teams. It's in a private browser window, so easy for me to differentiate between when I'm being a teacher and when I'm being a student. Oh, come on, I don't have time to wait. I've only got 1 minute left. So here's Oscar's version. I can see now that the week 2 tasks have been set, so I'll quickly click on View Assignments. And instead of me as a student having to navigate around my notebook, I can just click on week 2 tasks and dive straight in and start working on those tasks. So, I could start to record, make my draft for the radio advertisement. I could jump in there, insert, click on audio. Hey, everybody, welcome to Townsie's Crazy Learning Sessions. Join free now at education.microsoft.com. We'll click on stop. Nice, short and sweet video recording. I can click close as the student. Now I'm ready. Might add some more work if I need to. Happy days. And click on turn in. Oh, I get the sloth. Yes, I haven't had the sloth for ages. So back over now into teacher view. Holy moly. If I was able to put my screens side by side just then, which I could have seen Oscar typing live into that page. So I could now provide some feedback via Teams, but I could also potentially jump in and provide some feedback via the OneNote document itself. And let's not forget providing feedback via stickers as well. So I could go through, look at all my students' work, you know, when I'm ready, then opt to return all of the grades at once if you have graded work with the rubric, and they'll get a notification to say that, you know, their teacher's been in there to provide some feedback. So I really prefer that in regards to, you know, using Teams and Class Notebook to distribute work. You can obviously still just use the standalone OneNote Class Notebook tool that's built into OneNote for Windows 10 automatically. It's not an extra add-in, and you can distribute the page as well. But I just thought it was better to show best practice in a best practice webinar. And I think best practice involves using Teams assignments to distribute your work. So, 4 minutes and counting. I haven't also showed how to connect the existing OneNote notebooks. So at the moment, I would suggest that instead of, if you've already got an existing OneNote notebook, I would grab the link to that OneNote notebook from your Class Notebook experience. And in Microsoft Teams, instead of clicking plus and add OneNote, select website and paste the link in. And then students can just link to your existing notebook via the website tab, rather than the built-in Class Notebook. That's so much easier than trying to transfer content when the syncing might be problematic for you. So I know that was quick, but hopefully that answered that question about existing OneNotes being connected to Teams. All right, I've only got 3 minutes for this one, but that's okay. Looking at updating your existing OneNote experience. So, you know, I actually should add first. The Windows 10 application on PC is infinitely better, in my opinion, than OneNote 2016. Now, you saw me at the beginning. I put my OneNote cape on. I've told you I've been using OneNote since 2007, which means you know that I'm used to, or have been used to using OneNote 2016 with the notebooks down the left-hand side, sections across the top, pages down the right. And I loved that version of OneNote. And the Windows 10 app came along and it just wasn't good enough for me. But the OneNote Windows 10 team over the years have been hard at work building the features into the Windows 10 app so that it's not an extra add-in for Class Notebook. It's not an extra add-in for immersive reader and learning tools. The feature updates that we announce via our blogs and Twitter and Mike Tholfsen, who's the king of OneNote, and all the amazing great features that we've announced recently. Even if you're on a managed device, so if you've got a New South Wales DOE computer and you're using Windows 10, if we announce an update, you just need to go in and update your apps via the store if they're not automatically updating already, and you'll get our amazing, awesome feature updates. If you're using OneNote 2016, you have to, wait, and 6-month cycles is usually the feature updates for OneNote 2016. If your device is managed by your school, you have to wait for your school IT department or department IT department to push out updates for an image update. It can be quite cumbersome. So if I haven't convinced you yet, Windows 10 application on on PC is where it's at. I love it. I actually find OneNote 2016 weird now, and I've probably been using the app for about 2 years. So moving over is obviously a change, but I promise you it's better and it gets better. Now, for those of you who might still have to use OneNote 2016 because your device might be so locked down that you can't install apps, for example, or you just really don't want to leave OneNote 2016, that's okay. We have some great suggestions for updating your OneNote 2016 environment. And I'll share the PDF in just a moment where you can do that. So you need to make sure your OneNote 2016 software is up to date if you have the ability to update it. And that if you're using the Class Notebook add-in, we've just released an update to that, and you need to make sure that you're using that latest updated one. If your IT department is the one that manages your administration on the device, then there are instructions for IT departments to go in and make sure their device fleet has the best optimum OneNote 2016 performance. But I'm going to leave this one here again. The Windows 10 application should be your new best friend when it comes to OneNote. And you can easily jump into your start menu. Oops, don't know why that's so small. And you can go into default apps and set OneNote Windows 10 app to be your default opener of OneNote notebooks instead. And there's instructions for doing that in the PDF I'll share soon. Oh, look, I forgot I had videos. Happy days. So yeah, you can install the OneNote 2016 updates simply by going in. I'll just mute Mike, even though he does have a fabulous voice. But basically, the screenshot works really well from the beginning. You just click on File. On the right-hand side, you'll see Account, Updates, and you can do it literally from the File menu in OneNote 2016. And then also make sure you're updating that class notebook add-in as well, and clicking on Install. And there's a download link for that at the aka.ms/OneNote April 2020 support guide. All right, OneNote on iOS. If you're using OneNote on iPad or iPhone, it is a good idea to go into the settings. Just look for the settings cog in the top right-hand corner and slide off auto sync attachments. That can just be good for your data as well. I turned it off long ago, and that can also improve your performance with syncing from mobile devices. So it's the updates and settings that are really important for you as part of this conversation, as well as how you make your OneNote content. So you've had to listen to me for an hour, so I'm going to give you a gift. In the announcements, I'm going to share a link, but you can also take a photo or write it down. If you go to http, what's it called, //aka, because I'm typing it as I speak, OneNote best practice, I just spelt it wrong. Let's delete that. If one of my buddies in the background can share that link, because I can't type anymore. What you're going to find is an interactive PDF that you can use, share. Probably don't print an interactive PDF. It's not as much fun. And in that PDF, if I quickly just open it, because I realize I'm over time and I'm really sorry. Here is the PDF. It is a thing of glory. We have a fabulous team of people in our marketing team and the education team at Microsoft, and they have set up this amazing PDF. And it is hyperlinkable. My 4 rules that I talked about, even though I put the updates and settings at the end. You know, there's those 4 rules. If I click on updates and settings, it takes me to some information on the updates and settings for my particular notebooks. How to connect that existing class notebook is there as well. And then if I click on creating content, that will take me to better ways to create content. I can also, you know, click on adding content and see all those great ways to embed files. And finally, I can click on sharing content and see the awesome ways to share content easily from Microsoft OneNote. So thank you, everybody. I hope you learned hopefully some new ideas for using OneNote that can really help your students, because let's face it, that's what we're all here for. But I also hope you learned some great ideas on using OneNote in a best practice approach, so that you do have the best sync experience and your students are getting the best work from their end as well. So thanks, everyone. We will still be able to answer the questions once I end the live event, so don't stress about that. And don't forget to head to that other AKA link for all of the updates on OneNote and best practice. So actually, I'll leave it on the gift page because that's got both the links on it for you. So quickly take a photo. Don't forget that if you joined, the link that you clicked on to join live today also becomes the watch later link as well. So yeah, have fun, everyone. Hope you enjoy that PDF and hope you have lots of fun creating OneNote content for your students to engage with. Yeah. Have a great afternoon, enjoy week 2, and I really hope you're staying safe out there and having lots of fun using OneNote in your classroom. Thanks, everyone.